Voi kudia son sarache, neketru detiche. Morson tosa chembago, ulbeche mogo purnarache. Sobor son sarar dusre ashchenan goa hosle amche. Sogoya eta, koshi sanweta, uiche kore suku, mogo pauta, uicha lokato, mogo taka melta, ya korea mogan, tan mogo niuta. Por morir pulante, kudia son sarache, ketru detiche. Morson tosa chembago, urbeche mogo purnarache. Sobor son sarar dusre ashchenan goa hosle amche. Melta, ya korea mogan, dana mugniuta. Wakoin karache, por morir pulante, kudia son sarache, ketru detiche. Morson tosa chembago, urbeche mogo purnarache. Sobor son sarar dusre ashchenan goa hosle amche. From Goa with love, Goa with love, Goa with love. From Goa with love, Goa with love, Goa with love. From Goa with love, Goa with love.
So, we gather again, and we gather again, and the gathering becomes bigger, and the party just don't stop. So finally, we have such a huge gathering that we are all over the world, in some places or the other, trying to have some very lovely celebrations and gatherings, all in the name of dancing. The funny part is when we also accept the fact that scientifically dancing is supposed to be a very nice phenomenon to indulge in. It's a nice activity. In our curriculum or education system, we find this not. It's quite funny that this is the state of affairs right now. So as we continue our existence as humankind, we do understand this is going to only get better. Now the scene is, as it's going to get better, the going to part, this is going to happen, is the part that we have to update ourselves with, because some of us may not really understand what is really going on if we suddenly enter a topic in the middle of things. Drugs. Okay, let's listen to this word again. It's been the most horrible word to many people's lives, and it's been quite an alternative term, meaning something totally different to many more people in many more people's lives. So this word is going to be understood just for the fact that if we do not understand this now, we will never ever be on the same page again. I mean, not again, but we will not be on the same page. And this is a situation. Now I'll tell you why this is a situation. See, in Portugal or the Czech Republic, if you walk around with some drugs in your pocket, a certain type of drug, for instance, then this is also allowed up till 1 gram. All right. So here you have a world right now. This is going on right now as we speak. Okay. In certain places of the world, there are positions taken by the law where we are allowing certain amount for consumption, and this is based on the fact that the authorities are not able to curb and control drugs. You see, this idea of curbing and control drugs is something which we must understand in terms of one thing which can never, ever, ever be said. We will make Goa or this place or that place drug free. Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, there's no such thing. This is just not possible. Crime and drugs are situations that have been part of society. And since many of us have not understood why people are inside in jail and why they keep remaining there and get into even worse lifestyles when they are supposed to be actually there for a rehabilitation and getting out back into the fold of society. This being the starting point, today here is where we are at. Okay, where it's very easy for someone to think of it that if someone has come up to you and hurt you in certain ways, physically as well, there is every right for you to put this person in a situation where he gets into jail and loses his freedom. But the question is, how many of us really know how or what it is to be a criminal without wanting to be one? This is the very important point, which is why many countries have understood that let's allow this situation of a little bit of quantity so that we understand that our systems are not perfect. Our administrative systems, political systems are definitely not perfect. Okay, so since they will be having these loopholes, you can't really catch the general public who get access to these things on the middle of the road and streets and things where they are not supposed to be indulging into. When these things fall into their hands, you can't suddenly blame only them for having it, because there is a part blame of the way it came in. If it came into your country through some other way that you did not know of, then you should be knowing of this sooner or later. And hence, this has been a tolerance situation with regards to substances and drugs. So if it is going to be like this, then we have to understand what are these things and how do these things affect our children and the generations ahead. And why do we always freak out when a newspaper article comes talking about drugs, and we always, look for things to do or some disciplines to make within your children as to how to avoid the situation. Now, it's all good to avoid the situation, but how long will we keep avoiding the situation without knowing anything about the situation? This is a huge situation itself. So let's try and understand drugs from the perspective of the word and the meaning, first of all. Okay, let's say, if you were to talk about a concept, you talk about a word, and then you find out the meaning in, let's say, the Oxford Dictionary or some dictionary, which is a common meaning, yeah? So now, if you look into this, which you all can look into yourselves, it's not a big deal. AI is here all the time. The point that I fill in is between the lines. Okay, so here goes. Now, if there is a possession of cocaine of 1 gram, it is assumed that it is for your consumption of less than 1 gram. This is, and it is allowed for recreational purposes by the standards of the law, because in such places they have the tolerance level as equal to the level of administration that they are working with right now. So it's actually quite practical. It's quite real. They know you cannot have a drug-free place, and it will come. So if it is, at least let's make sure that nobody gets really high enough that they start carrying quantities around and indulging in things which are of danger. So they have already put this as a tolerance. Now, why has this been put as we were understanding is because there is no perfect society. Yeah, there is nothing called a perfect society. In fact, every society is already perfect in itself. So this word perfect is actually out of relevance. But we can't have these things and ideas called drug-free Goa or a drug-free place. No, because the word drugs involves a lot of things that you are doing every day, and are not aware that you have been doing this every day. So it's very easy to guess what are the three biggest addictions. Let's get straight to the point. Okay. The three biggest addictions in our own lives as we lead them. Okay. And this has to be understood from a very domestic point of view. Let's start with what are children addicted to? Yeah. Now, this is a very easy answer. And if you look at the way the world is moving with regards to the industry of products that come out from sugar, the chocolate industry and the industry for sweets, which can be endless. Okay. All of these things, including cola, actually costs, when you produce them, they actually cost a couple of cents, just a couple of cents. But you're being given this for a nice amount, which even you're not feeling heavy on yourself because already the production cost is this much. So as we get to understand, sugar is a huge part of our existence, also for our carbohydrates and things like this for our system to run. But there are situations that sugar can create, and hence there are ideas that we should keep children and give them a chance with the concept of sugar. Yeah. Unless you start giving them sugar right at the beginning and they are totally into it already. And there are things called sugar rushes, which have been spoken about by several parents at several times. So, as we make this a very child friendly topic, the question was to a very nice teacher, why do we stay away from the point of this topic of drugs? Why do we keep the topic of drugs away from children? Why do we do this? Now the answer, long story short, is this. The answer is because we ourselves don't have the answers to the questions that might be asked. Okay. Now this is just like explaining what is death to a child when a pet dies, for instance, or what is sex to an adolescent when that time comes up. In the same breath, these things like chocolate, you need to keep a little distance from the child. This is a very new perspective. And this is a new perspective because the world has understood over a period of time, from when our grandmas would say sugar is good for your bones, to a time where there are advertisements actually saying sugar makes you nice and fresh. These are actually advertisements coming on television. So there has been an industry created with it, and then this industry has blown out of proportion many more things, and that has led to an overuse and abuse. Okay. So if you can use a thing like sugar nicely in your life, you will have a very lovely life. Okay. Now sugar is something that all of us use, including children, and we all need to use it. But there are elements of sugar that come from the drug side of the fence, which is basically there's sugar in fruit. What I'm trying to understand here is, if there is sugar in fruit and natural substances in the form of sucrose, etc., why do we need to actually indulge in making sugar separately and then putting it out and then actually having some other things getting mixed in this, when we can actually have natural sugar, from fruits, from jaggery? We may be interested in looking up what jaggery is from the western side of the world, if some people are not getting this word right. But the understanding is very clear. We are now getting to figure out that things like sugar, which were in our daily life, actually need to have a discipline around it. Okay. And there is something which we understand from the point of view of a person who in our society has gone to a rehabilitation center. Now, a rehabilitation center is a place where someone gets into something or some types of substance use, which makes them dependent on the substance. Okay, so that means every day you have to do this substance. If you don't do this substance, finish. Your mood goes for a toss. Your psychological space and your physical space is not very good. This is how we can see it. Simply from the point of view of mental health, how's your mental health and how's your physical health? Both your mental health and physical health are not good when you're dependent on this particular substance. Yeah. This is very true in the case of sugar. Now, if this is true in the case of sugar, and sugar is what we have in our houses every day, will it be a long time before this may also be true for many other substances that may become more part of our daily routine every day? Because see, in Canada, in Czech Republic, there is 2.5 grams of cocaine that you can actually carry in Canada, in British Columbia, when they have decriminalized this possession. Yeah. So you can actually carry a certain amount of drugs is the talk of the day today. And to bring us all on the same page, some of us actually are a little skeptical about this. Some of us don't know about this. Some of us don't even understand what this is. So here is an attempt in the show to try and make everybody understand where do drugs come from, why are they bad, what is the element that makes them bad, and so on and so forth. Now, first thing, drugs are not bad because of the fact that they are used by people. Okay, sugar happens to be also a drug at the end of the day if you actually think about it. So, if you're using it right, it is good for yourself. And if you're falling into a dependency about this substance, then you've not been using it correctly, you've been abusing it. And this will show the results, if you're abusing or not, will show in your physical and mental health. That is why, whenever you go to a rehabilitation center for an addiction of a substance, that you're dependent on this particular substance, we check for a physical addiction and we check for a psychological addiction. Now, the physical addiction is where you get withdrawal symptoms, where you can actually get physical headaches and body aches, physical, when you don't do the substance because you're dependent on it. The psychological dependence is another different world where you are thinking you need it, but you cannot escape this thought. It's just not possible for you that because you're so linked into the substance psychologically through many other activities of how you do the substance that this has made you dependent. Okay, so you're mentally dependent. Now, when you get into such zones, there are systems made by the administration that also try to take care of such people. And these are rehabilitation centers. So now see, what happens for people who are using substances and drugs? For things like sugar, you have your own discipline around it, you're good. You don't get dependent about it, you're good. You keep your distance from this particular element and you use just what you need to use it for. In small quantities and in natural quantities, you're good. Now, these fundamentals apply to the whole of the drug world. Yeah. However, there is already a situation where we have understood that there are physical as well as mental addictions. Yeah. So in this case, there are some which are very, very hard. And we should not be indulging in this at all. We know this from stories from the elder generation. They know this from stories from the previous generation. And since so many years that mankind has been around, all the drugs that have been around in this time have been experienced by someone or the other who's told the story and has got their story on the newspapers for having been in a rehabilitation center and transformed their lives back. You see, the most hardest cases come from this drug, which come from this opium side of the fence. So now this is technically a plant. All right. And this plant was used for medicinal purposes because it was a substance which would change certain situations physically and mentally within you. That change was used for a medical purpose. It was used for a good purpose. Now, if you remember the last show, we understand that all the students in the class, in one particular class that everybody went to in school, all the students in the class are not the same. Some are more enthusiastic and would like to experiment with things, and some would not. So we have already had our share of people experimenting with the opioids, and we have understood that these things are something which you should stay away from because they are extremely addictive. Okay, fair enough. However, there is a substance in our society, like sugar, which is only staying away from like total doom of this world because the children are not allowed to do this. Okay, now sugar the children can eat. So there is more danger actually for that if you think about it. But for this particular substance, this is a substance that children are not allowed. It's only 18 plus. But everybody does it. Okay, let's rearrange that word. Everybody cannot be a reality. Okay, so let's rearrange that word and say that many people do it. So we are talking about a substance that has been promoted by the shops, promoted by film stars. Okay, and incidentally, one of the biggest film stars and superstars who made a lot of money from this particular product for this advertising of this product finally died of cancer because of this product. So the story is very simple. However, these things were given permission. These things are not drugs that we are talking about. These things were given permission. Sugar is all over the place. Okay. We have this product that we are talking about in terms of this word called tobacco. However, what we get inside tobacco is also the substance called nicotine as we use this tobacco. And this happens to be even more addictive than the opioids. Now, think about it. We found out that heroin and the opioids are dangerous. We keep them away. But there is a substance which is even more dangerous than heroin. It's claimed to be so by sciences, not my opinion. And it is all around in the market. See, this goes to say that we have built our own world and created our own world, and there have been things which we have not done correct, and we will have to unlearn them, like the cigarette industry. But you see, a lot of things work on the basis of this and have a lot of relationship in between. So you see, because of the cigarette industry, there is some other health industry that earns 3 times more the amount because of the existence of the cigarette industry. Now, the economies are creating their own ecosystems. Now, this is something which we are creating, in the sense, like not you who's listening there in particular, but it's getting created in our realities because of the pull of economics. And this is why we have not been able to take cigarettes away from the shops. We have admitted, governments all over the world, let's get this clear, governments all over the world have admitted that cigarette smoking is injurious to health, as it is said on all packets. Then the cigarette companies were actually made to put the picture on the packet that you get, which is, of course, quite a psychedelic one. And that has been made just to give the disclaimer that you're selling the product, it is going to kill you, but you know that it's going to kill you and you're buying it. Great. In this question, we have to ask ourselves whether the drug is the problem, or is it our working of the system of how we use and abuse this system or the substance or the drug that is the situation. So we have to reconsider the situation, drugs are bad, to the fact that the use of drugs is to be understood well as to not to be abused, just like sugar, which we do every day. So some of the biggest things that we are already, if not fully addicted, then halfway addicted to, for most of us, if for many of us, if we can say it like that, not most, then that would be sugar, cigarettes, and alcohol. Now, let's understand the world of alcohol. Alcohol is a situation which is coming for, it's been given the tag of celebration. They say when there is any event in a cultural space, they would bring out something and they would have it and they would celebrate together. Okay, so they are basically sharing a substance. Now that can be food, very clearly. That can be food, and that's good enough. I mean, we have food that's always been good. So this is something which we need to see, where food is something which is a very realistic way of satisfying yourself. And when we look at different understandings of drugs, we have to see that there are things that go along with food and things that don't go along with food. Okay, like for example, smoking. Smoking and eating don't really go together. And the governments realize it at a point where they actually today have made a law that if you are eating your food, you can be allowed and you have a right to completely fair enough be eating your food in peace without any smoke of anybody's cigarette who's not eating probably going into your face. So you have now restaurants where you have spaces where it's all right to eat and nobody will smoke around you because the restaurants understand that the place is meant for eating, and then we finally give you that space. So the smoking corner was developed so that it takes care of people who still want to smoke. Now, why was this taken care of? Why was it not given an attitude like, let it be? It'll help them. Maybe they will not go to smoke. No, it was given there because people understand now that the cigarette is a substance that has been there and already been an addiction since many years in society. Now, when you become addicted to things like this and cannot give up things like this, the attachment brings you to a point where your mental health is not the best because you're losing every time you say, I'm not going to do this, and you do this. I'm not going to do this, and you do this. Now, this can happen to us all the time, and it's all right. But when it happens with one particular thing that you keep on failing, that can, it's not very healthy to be in that zone. The rest of judgments I leave for the listeners to just figure out. But as far as we are understanding drugs, we have now hit upon sugar, which even children are into. We've hit upon cigarettes and nicotine, which is the drug to be very careful about, which is even more powerful than heroin in terms of dependency. And then we've understood alcohol. Now, alcohol is also something where you have dependency, and it is quite physical. It's not so much psychological because once you get over it, then you can build up a mind which helps you stay and keep your attachment away from this particular substance. So without getting a little bit boring about these situations and trying to get into an anonymous talk, alcoholic anonymous situation, it is nice to rather understand this before you indulge in the substance, which is why many people from countries like Germany who have indulged in substance use for a long time and could not manage not using it because it was available everywhere. There was speed available everywhere. There is MDMA and cocaine available at many places that you cannot even imagine. And because of this, many people have got into this particular substance. Now there are people like Hans Kusto, who was mentioned in the first show, and his profile was also mentioned in the article written about the first show. This gentleman, for instance, comes from a mindset where he has been in the society where none of his friends were able to actually keep away from the drugs because it always happened to come up again and again, and then they became dependent, and then they kept on using them, and then certain substances you can actually use for a longer time because they keep on coming to you because they are freely available again, because there is an authority situation that has gone a little bit awry. There's been a slight lapse. And knowing that this lapse is there has led to many people trying to now take matters into their own hands. So what they're doing is, okay, we know that we cannot escape from these substances. So when we come across these substances, at least we should know what these substances are all about. What are these substances? Now you see, the world of AI is very intelligent, and can just bring up a lot of things if you just ask. All you have to do is ask. The information right now in today's world is already there. But what to do from this information is a huge thing. For instance, if you type drugs online and if you look for a particular type of drug, as a curious person, you would like to know how it works, what it does to you, what are the risks. But these are the general questions that your mind comes up with. Knowing that these are the general questions, somebody on the other side actually fills in the answers to the general questions. However, there are things that can be very different from one person to the next person. So what you're reading online is actually having a common link, common ground, but may necessarily not mean that that really happens to you. In fact, in 99% of the cases, what you read about will never happen to you. However, the idea of still indulging in substances exists. So what did people like Hans Cousteau and his friends did? They made this drug enjoyment culture. If you're going to be indulging in things like this, at least enjoy it. And if you want to enjoy it, then at least do it right with knowing what it is. Okay, you could be doing some powder and it could be anything. Someone could tell you it is ketamine and you would believe. Someone could tell you it's cocaine and you would believe. And that is why none of us will actually ever get to know any sort of substance which is a powder, what it really is, because there is no testing device around. So that's exactly what these people in Germany have actually got around to doing on a do it yourself, DIY situation. So what they do is they go to all these festivals with drug testers. And if you have powders that you would like to indulge in, then you can check this powder, what belongs inside this powder, because someone has sold it to you saying it is this particular substance. Let's say cocaine. But it may not be cocaine. So if the substance has to be checked through a scientific situation, only then will you be able to find out. Now, these people have made that possible very simply. So now what is happening? Everybody who does indulge in this anyways is saying, yeah, I want to do this. I want to try something else. And for whatever reason, no real reason required there, at least now there is a chance that they will be able to check what they are doing before they do it. And that becomes a better way of enjoying the situation rather than going down with a fatality. You see, fatalities are something that we need to avoid, obviously. Aggression is something that we need to avoid, obviously. So when we understand the world of drugs, we have to really understand it well. Because on one side of the fence, somebody who's smoking a nice joint of marijuana, for him, there is no problem. Because in his place, it is totally accepted. But in another part of the world, although it is religiously accepted, it is not legally accepted. And that makes people want to keep it away. Obviously, when a person knows that something is illegal, they would not like to be in trouble with the law, and hence, respectfully, they would keep away from these things. Now, here is another understanding of the situation where marijuana has also been looked at as a drug and as a substance and something that can actually make you totally cuckoo. There were advertisements on television and a whole phase with a group of songs called Reefer Madness, which can actually be researched online because this was a time when in America they were actually advertising against marijuana, saying marijuana makes you crazy. Now, an interesting thing here, just on a small detour, is there are some things called OCDs, obsessive compulsive disorders. And up till right now in the world, we have found more than 100 obsessive compulsive disorders. But the first time we started off with finding out what are obsessive compulsive disorders, we had found only one obsessive compulsive disorder. And guess what that was? It was called craziness. So, I wish you good luck in figuring out your craziness because I believe we would need to be crazy to understand other parts of ourselves. So, apart from whatever my opinion is saying, let's get back to the idea of drugs and what these things are all about. And just to make a small recap, we were talking about the drugs which are available freely amongst us. And these were sugar, which even children are indulging in. Then there is alcohol, and then there are cigarettes. So these are legal. Then the most popular one, actually, which comes up a little bit later and has a lot of side effects, but is really very, very, very popular. And not many people might like even getting this word out because they really like this and they want to do it every day anyways. Yes, I also indulge in this substance. I in fact call it legal cocaine. It's coffee, caffeine. And hence we understand that in the legal sense there are already drugs amongst us. So now here is a very important understanding from a German magazine which was written about 3 years ago. What this magazine says is if you are not looking at certain drugs for their medical use, just because these drugs are found on the street and the youth indulge in these drugs and they are illegal, because of this, if you do not examine their contribution or possible contribution to medical use, then you are being unscientific. So, this was a German magazine, a Pflege magazine, which is basically a magazine for the side of nursing and taking care, the caregivers manual, the medical side. So, in this magazine, it was very clearly mentioned that if you don't look at substances like MDMA or cocaine or other substances for what else these substances can do, then you are actually being pretty unscientific. Now, what has happened here is it's taken a huge turn with many things. Like, for example, marijuana, which people have been searched and stripped of their respect for many years, and people have been called criminals for smoking, is right now totally accepted as for recreational use as well as for medical use. And there are some places where they accept it totally, and there are some places where they do not accept it totally. So, for instance, in Germany, in Uruguay, in Canada, in Malta, these places have legalized it to a point of for recreational use as well. Okay, there is a possession limit, obviously. So, this is how the law understands whether you are a dealer who's selling and spreading something which may be not desirable, or you are a consumer. This brings us to the point of, if I am just standing around and someone gives me something which is illegal but has come in through the borders anyways, which are heavily policed, and still it has come in, then of course it is not the fault of the citizen, it's definitely the fault of the establishment and of the police and the policing at this border. And hence, when this person actually gets this substance, the person does not need to be blamed for his uh, possession. You see, secondly, also it depends on this person how much he's having with him. Because if this person is just standing somewhere and gets something, why would he get 1 kilo of it? You see, so if he's getting 1 kilo of it, it's obviously for a matter of maybe selling it or giving it to somebody where he can make some economic benefit, and that is, of course, not required. And that is the part where the legal side of the fence is very firm. So you understand, when you talk about marijuana in other countries as well, today, since Germany and other parts of the world like Canada have legalized this particular substance, firstly, they are not mad. Let's look at it like this. Now, why we say this is because there are many people from the other side of the world who do not even know that marijuana is legal in a different side of the world. Now, we are living in the same world, and that is why the show is to explain between the lines. So, the information that's going to be going out to you is going to be simple, that's already there on AI. I'm going to be compiling it and putting it into an article so you can reflect about it if you really want. But this show and this talk right now is just to let you know how upside down our world is, because right now we are only talking about legal drugs which are there amongst us, which are totally dangerous, which can kill you, but we are still having them around. If this is the case, the fact that we also have illegal substances around should not be a big problem to anyone, because crime and drugs are things which are part and parcel of society. Now, the understanding of criminalization is a very important thing here, because we understand something called respect. If somebody is standing in the middle of nowhere, gets a substance and indulges in this substance, it's not in the best interest to put the blame on this person as, why have you done something which is illegal? Because he got it. Okay, he tried it. Fine, fair enough. But I don't know how much more you can do with this. So, okay, fine at the most. But then the fact is, this person has already gone through this experience and has now figured out something else, which you have not figured out and I have not figured out. This happens to be the place where we all need to regroup and see where our matter about drugs lies. The update to our information is extremely important. And why it is important? It's important because there are people dying around us. If you think people dying around us has only to do with violence and aggression, then you have to think twice. We will have a little bit of music maybe in the background so things can get a little bit nicer for us. Because things are going to get little bit heavier. And the heavy part of the story is coming from the mouth of this mic. There have been several friends that have been lost due to this drug cocaine. More than 20, to be honest. And such influences have, of course, made many think. Because of such influences, we lost some people around us, and this is not a very nice thing to happen. And hence, it's nice to know what is going around in the markets these days. What are the drugs that are going around? When my child goes to school, what possibly can my child be getting into? And when my child or someone does get into it, what can be done? Because we understand that the substances that are around can have two types of dependencies. One is physical and one is psychological. And both can be treated. So when we start with these sort of ideas, it's nice to have a clear mind. And to start with this clear mind, let's go on to understanding a certain few facts that we may have got wrong. Like, for example, weed is not legal in the Amsterdam, my dears. This, in fact, has been tolerated and been cordoned off as per the law, which you can, of course, read in the books of this place. The purchase, the consumption in coffee shops, and a certain amount of possession has been tolerated by the state, and this is meant for the practice of tourism, and this is meant for the practice of coffee shops operating these only. So only government licensed places, which we call coffee shops, will be operating with these things. Now, they have not allowed this thing but kept it illegal for the fact that they are just hypocrites. It's not like that, because they have decriminalized it. So you see, before you make a substance from illegal to legal, there is an aspect to look at it. Where is the criminal content? The criminal content, as of what we understand, is in the quantity. If it is something that you want to pass over and make some business out of it, definitely things are not ready for this, and the law is not ready for this, because you're not going to be paying tax for this thing, which means it is unfair. This is an understanding, yeah? This is not my opinion. So finally, when we come to the understanding of figuring out what drugs we can and what drugs we can't do, as I was thinking about it, this is a really, really huge topic. So amongst this small bomb that was dropped on y'all, that actually things are not really fully legal in Amsterdam, for instance, even while everybody goes there, the point comes across for decriminalization. And the decriminalization aspect is the most important aspect of this show today, basically because your respect is very important. Soon there will be times in places like Germany when you walk around smoking a joint of weed and nobody will give a damn. Nobody will look at you. You can be walking with your children and smoking this joint of weed, and nobody will give a real damn. You can be smoking a joint and driving your car, which is extremely possible right now as we speak, and nobody will give a damn. I mean, you can be doing this by the books, within the law. So before you start to shout at someone with regards to the concept of marijuana, no matter even if this person is a child, keeping aggression is always a good way, and understanding the topic is the best. So in this spirit, it would be nice to understand what drugs are all about. And having understood that the worst killers are actually legal amongst us, what more damage can be done by the other ones which have been classified already? You see, the law has classified drugs very nicely. They say the drugs can be classified into Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Yeah. Now, if you go and check what is the classification for Schedule 1, what is the classification for Schedule 2, it is because of potential abuse and how much you can abuse it. If things can be abused a lot and you can die, then it will be Schedule 1. And if not so much, it will be Schedule 2. This reason for Schedule 2 is also because there is a little bit of medicinal use possibility in it. So the medicinal use has become the other element. First is decriminalization, which is as soon as you smoke something that is illegal or you do something that is illegal, you are not a criminal. Because the fault of it coming to you lies with the administration. And hence, the decriminalization process is an extremely important process that should be taken up by the entire administration process of the whole world, because this is a matter of respect. This is a matter of what you deserve to be respected for. And you don't need to be disrespected for smoking something, especially when you've not really done damage with smoking, especially because there have no cases ever been recorded with damage done by smoking of marijuana. Anyways, not to make a case for it, let's be very honest about this show. This show is not to promote things. This show is to make an understanding for what drugs are all about. And as of right now, we've just spoken about the legal aspects where there are legal drugs within amongst us which are totally allowed by the government, and people make a lot of money on these things, including the government. A lot of taxes happen from sale of cigarettes, for instance. So while we call someone a merchant of death, it's a little bit trippy here, because we ourselves are actually quite easy to promote lighting up a cigarette and offering a friend a cigarette. If you offer a friend a cigarette and if you light up a friend a cigarette, you are, in effect, making something to this friend which, which if you see in the purest term, in a politically correct context, you are actually promoting that idea. So think twice before you go in for a smoke break. This is something which has been done by yours truly and has been quite interesting for colleagues, because if you don't go in for a smoke break, maybe they will also not go in for a smoke break, and you can have another small meal instead, or you can just have a nice chat instead. Now, this is something that has to come from within, from every other individual. So this is not really about preaching things like a guru. It's just about understanding where an individuality and the responsibility of the individual lies with regards to consumption. So you have to understand that drugs are bad. This line is basically a line you can say to a child. And the child should look at you and say, but mama, but dada, we are eating sugar every day. And that's it. So this is why we need to understand the world of drugs and be on the same page so we can answer these questions to our children and not have the look of this stupidity element on our faces when we are confronted with topics like this. Now, these topics have been considered extremely controversial, and hence the media has been held hugely responsible for not spilling out the beans and not breaking us on the same page like they show. Let's be very clear about this. The media is most totally to be responsible for explaining to you what is going on in your society. If there can be a magazine that says anything illegal should just directly be kept in a box and locked away forever and not looked at scientifically, this is basically unscientific. So you cannot be looking at things just because of their legal stature and forgetting the things because of their illegal stature. Also, people, because with the process of decriminalization, you have today many people who are using marijuana for medical use, then who are also using it for recreational use, and they can use this freely and don't have to be criminals or be criminalized for smoking. Now, how is this different for another drug? Is another understanding of what this drug is all about. Because so far we understand that nicotine is allowed, tobacco with the nicotine is allowed. Now you're having alcohol allowed. You're having sugar, which even children are eating and getting hooked onto, and having sugar rush is all about. So, what is this idea that drugs are bad? So, this is an element where again the media has to take full responsibility of being able to explain. And if you have not been able to explain, there should be responsibility to this. Because I would like to take responsibility of not being able to explain within this own show. And I would like to also declare definitely that if you've not found something interesting in this podcast about drugs and in the matter that I'm releasing with this podcast, which is going to correspond with what I'm talking about and giving you facts and details about what I'm talking about, then it should also reflect something from your side where you can understand things very clearly. So I hope this, and I continue to the point of understanding what is looked at from the world's perspective, which are medicines, and what are drugs coming under basically. Now, the drugs are coming under medicines, and they're coming under recreational, and then they're coming under illicit and illegal. So, if you look at it like this, there is a huge difference in how you will see the world. But let's look at it from the point of view of real stories. So, if you compile all the real data, real statistical data together, the points that we reach at, or the one point that we reach at for doing a substance, any substance, the negative here is dependency. Okay? And if it is a new substance, there is an answer I want to give out right now to people who want to listen as far as why do people indulge in substance use, newer substances, or checking this out, or drug use, how many people commercially call it. Why do we do this? Now, you see, there was a time when you would sort of have a small situation with your girlfriend, and then you would go to the bar and you would have a drink, and then you would express yourself in whatever way you would like to express yourself. That was because alcohol was totally legal and still is. And hence it's all right to simply go and have a drink. Now, if you do this on a regular level, that may be something which will change things in your life totally, because it will change you physically because of addictions, and it will also have a psychological impact because you will think differently in different states of mind, and then you will not know which one could be the right one. You could be thinking about many things as you drink your first drink to the second drink to the third drink. Now, not to put alcohol in a spot, what we understand here is how substances affect us, and what is the negative part that we should understand when it comes to drugs. The negative part is dependency. What is the positive part? Okay, let's get this clear. I am not promoting any show for drugs and any drugs to be taken or indulgences. Food is the best and the biggest and the most highest high you will ever get. From yours truly, Claron Fidelis Mazrello, please take it, is consciousness. This is the highest high ever, the biggest drug ever. And this has been said from the philosophy of Buddha as well. So it's not really my own opinion, but I have understood this, and I believe that this is a very, very powerful opinion to go by all your lives. This is quite a strong one. Apart from that, if you were to ask someone what is the reason for indulging in some substances, the only reason that could possibly be to do something like this is to open up your mind to a better consciousness. Why? Because like we said, consciousness is the highest high and the biggest drug. You can research on this element and what this means from the point of view of philosophy for yourselves. But this is why we understand that the drugs that we are looking at need to be understood from this particular point of view. Some things that could change your consciousness for the better. Now, if you're talking about changing your consciousness for the better, let's understand one thing. You're talking about something which has never, ever been written about in sciences. Now, what has never been written about in sciences? Oh my God. What could this be? It's coming on this show called From Goa with Love. He's talking about a concept which has never, ever, 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 ever been written by sciences, man or woman. So, what is this all about? Yeah, we are talking about. So let's recap. So we get things very clear and we don't get confused about this. Okay, what we are saying here is a very fundamental philosophy says consciousness is the highest high you will ever have. It's the father of all drugs, the father of all highs, the mother of all highs, and mother of all drugs. Yeah. So if this is the case, why should you indulge in drugs? To open up your consciousness to a better space? Simple answer. That is the only reason to have to indulge in something like this. If you do a substance and it closes you down to something which you never want to be, I'm not sure it will be possible that you can go on very nicely. Anyways, there is a song which I would like to play, and this is very important to play by the end of the show. I'm not sure if it actually fits in, so I will just lower the volume at the end. But yes, what I was finally getting to was something that science has never, ever, ever spoken about. And I'm sorry, but I will have to say this and continue this in the next podcast because this is something that you have never, ever known. And science has never, ever spoken about this. What is it? It's called the mind.